And I am joined now, as always, by my friend, my colleague, Dane Brugler. And Dane, this week's episode comes well timed because I'm going to step outside the box a little bit and not force us to revisit Ty Simpson's performance against Oklahoma too much. Like we can leave that for another time. But as
Bless you.
always, when you pump a guy up, you know it's always going to be the next game where he lets you down a little bit.
Well, and that's the struggle with Ty is we don't really have the body of work, and so when he does have a game that's maybe not what he has shown in the past month or two, you weight it a little bit differently because, we just have a small sample size. This is his 10th start. So, yeah, we'll have plenty more to talk about with Ty as we go through in the next few months or next few weeks. But, these quarterbacks are going to come up with this discussion we're going to have today.
Sample size does, in fact, matter after all, no matter how much I try to hand wave it away. But that's not the overall topic of the show. We're going to take a little bit of a departure here as we move toward, shockingly, the end of the college football regular season. We're going to take a deep dive into next week as we get toward rivalry weekend and the end of the 12-game schedule. But I want to take a step back today, Dane, because it's weird when you start this thing out. It's so ambiguous, right? Like, I mean, we're learning about the prospects. We're trying to figure out which positions are deep, and we have no idea what any of it means to the landscape of the NFL because the season is just getting started. Everybody's 0-0, all the cliches about hope springing eternal, but the weather's cold, the holidays are on the horizon, and the draft order's starting to take shape, bud. We got some stinky teams across the NFL, and I think it's a good time to look at the top of the draft order because, of course, we don't know for sure how it's all going to settle in. There's still plenty of football left to play, but we have a pretty firm-looking top 10. We got, what is it? We got 10 teams exactly with 3 or fewer wins. And so you can sort of start to see the top 10 of the draft order crystallize. And I think that's important because the teams making this decision at the top of any draft have so much say in what it winds up looking like, in addition to just the players that are available and the positions of depth and stuff like that. But who is in what order can have such a drastic impact on the way we view a draft.
Right. It's not the order that's crystallized. It's the teams, right? It's the teams that we feel like are going to – and there's not a lot of shock, right? I mean, I think maybe Atlanta I thought would be better than this. There's a few teams that are surprising, but it's not surprising to see the Titans at the top. The Browns.
Hand up, pal. I thought Cam Ward might do something there. And I'm not saying that I thought they were going to have a Commanders type of year, but – I didn't think the Titans would be cruising toward the number 1 overall pick, and that's what it looks like is happening right now. I'm a little shocked and saddened to see just how bad it's been there. I thought they might be frisky, and they are not frisky.
They are not. I don't know. They have how many cornerstones on that roster? It's like just so few that I guess I'm not that surprised now. We'll see. Titans go to Cleveland in a couple weeks. That could be a matchup of the loser is the new favorite for the number 1 overall pick. This is the Titans have an interim head coach. The Browns have a head coach who's fighting for his job. So this isn't like neither team is going to pack it in. This isn't a tanking type of exercise for either of those teams or any of these teams. So it will be interesting to see how this plays out. Right now, the Giants are the number 2 team in terms of where the draft order is, but they've got at least 2 more wins, I think. When you look at that schedule, you think about what Jackson Dart can bring to that team. So we're still going to see plenty of fluctuation with this order, but I think that you're absolutely right. This is a good point in the calendar to kind of look at where we are and take the temperature of where we are with the players we think will be drafted that high, and then the teams that we think will be doing the drafting.
Before we dive in, I do just want to say, to your point that nothing is final, we're in for a little bit of a demolition derby, like a garbage truck demolition derby of just trash teams playing each other. Because like I'm looking at it right now, the Titans get the Browns coming up. They get the Saints at the end of the season. The Browns play the Raiders this week and the Titans later. The Saints have 2 games against the Falcons, a game against the Dolphins, and a game against the Jets. Like all of these teams that are jockeying for position in the top 10 are playing against each other, which could lead to some very fun games where the fan bases are like rooting for their team to lose, which is always a great place to be in November and December.
There are some fascinating examples in the past of this team won in week 17, this team where it just completely changed the order. And, all of a sudden the Titans are now picking number 1 and take Cam Ward. Or, I mean, there's numerous examples, and I'm sure this year will be the same. And with so many teams in the top 10 needing a quarterback, which we're about to talk about, every pick matters in terms of where these guys are selecting.
So the purpose of this is not to be a mock draft. Like I'm not interested in identifying a player or deciding which player is going to go first at his position. Like we got all spring to argue about Fernando Mendoza and Ty Simpson, or try to sort out the receiver pecking order, the edge rusher order, all that stuff. I'm not interested in that today. What I want to look at here is, again, the teams that look like they're going to have these picks and what might be available to them and the situations they find themselves in as well, and how that might affect the draft order. So it's an interesting place to start with the Tennessee Titans, who at 1-9 right now are holding the number 1 overall pick. We'll see if that changes. But actually, you can just start with a twofer, because I do think it's really interesting, Dane. To me, the teams that currently sit 1 and 2 in the draft order don't, you would think at least, need a quarterback. I know it hasn't been great for Cam Ward, but I personally would be pretty surprised to see the Titans pivot off of him after 1 year. And obviously, Jackson Dart, there have been some injury issues, but has showed plenty of promise on a Giants offense that doesn't have a ton of talent. And so it's interesting to think that this could be a year where the quarterback needy teams have to figure out a way past teams that might have an answer at that position.
If you were to put Cam Ward into this year's draft class, I think it'd be fascinating to hear teams stack the quarterbacks. Because I don't think there'd be any consensus. I think some teams would have Cam at the top. Others might have Cam third among this year's quarterback group. So, yeah, that would be really interesting. But I agree with you. I mean, it hasn't been a dream rookie season for Cam Ward, but there's been enough good in between the bad for there to be optimism. And the Titans really feel invested in this quarterback, as they should be. And so if the Titans finish with the top pick, they'll be in a power position. This almost has to be a trade back situation here. We've talked about this at length. There's no Myles Garrett, no Will Anderson, no Jamar Chase level of prospect at the top of this draft. So, and we know the Titans need help in multiple spots. And it's interesting because I think we always talk about that number 1 overall pick being traded, but it almost never happens. The last 25 years, it's happened twice. 2023, the Panthers came up to get Bryce Young, and then 2016, the Titans went up, or excuse me, the
Rams went up for the
Rams
Titans pick.
with the Titans. Yes, thank you.
Which, okay, how funny is that? Is like the Titans could be faced with another scenario where they drafted their quarterback the year before. They were still very bad, and you're in a chance where you can sell the number 1 overall pick. And by the way, all right, I'm stretching it a little bit, but I think it's fun. A guy that a team might come up for is a quarterback who played at Cal. I know Fernando Mendoza's not at Cal anymore, but I don't know. I think that's interesting.
You're not wrong. It is definitely interesting. I mean, it's just interesting that you think of the Cal quarterbacks, Jared Goff and Bowler and Aaron Rodgers, and yet Mendoza left Cal to go to Bloomington. College football's weird.
It's a new landscape.
It really is. So I don't know. This pick has to be a trade. If the Titans pick number 1, I'm not convinced they're going to get like what the Panthers gave up to go up to get Bryce Young. I mean, they gave up 2 1s, 2 2s, and DJ Moore. Now, the Jets, they have the ammo if they fall in love with one of these quarterbacks. The team that I'm most focused on, though, is the Browns. They have 2 first-round picks this year, and I would argue are the most motivated of all these teams to draft a quarterback in the top 10. And we'll talk about the Browns more here in a second. But from a Titans perspective, let's just say they make a deal with Cleveland. 2 1s this year and probably a third pick, whatever that ends up being, day 2 pick this year, next year. They could end up with the number 3 and number 20 overall picks in this draft. That could be edge linebacker Arvell Reese and wide receiver Mekhi Lemon. I mean, fill in whatever tandem you want there, but that's instant upgrades on both sides of the ball at 2 key positions. So, I think it's the Titans are, if they finish with the number 1 overall pick in a year where there's not that clear number 1 overall type of prospect, they're still in a good spot because there's a good chance they can move back and get a lot of picks where they can address these needs.
Do you think trading down to 3 from 1 could realistically net the Titans 2 first-round picks? Like, say it was the Browns, like number 3 and number 20. You think it would be worth that much?
It all comes down to what the competition is, right? Like, I don't even think you can look at past trades because it just all depends on what are other teams offering. What are the Jets offering? What are the Saints offering? Are they offering anything? How many underclassmen are in this draft, or how many quarterbacks are in this draft? If the Browns finish, let's say the Titans finish first, Browns are second. Do the Browns feel good about a couple of these quarterbacks where they don't have to make that trade and they feel good about whoever's going to be left for them at pick number 2? Or is this going to be another 1 quarterback draft where they have to go get their guy? It just feels like there's more urgency within that Browns organization to get it done. We've talked about the offseason in terms of a trade or free agency. Like, I mean, are you going to trade a 3rd-round pick for Mac Jones? Like, if the Browns don't draft a quarterback in the top 5, what else are they doing to upgrade that position? Because I don't know, if you look at 2027, and yeah, it does right now looks more appealing in terms of a quarterback draft. But if you're Andrew Berry, if you're Kevin Stefanski, you're just not promised that. And so I think that if you're the Titans, you would feel good about getting 2 first-round picks and then a kicker, another day 2 pick this year, next year. I think that's not a bad haul for in this particular draft to get. And I think it's interesting because with you're gonna have a new head coach in Tennessee. GM Mike Borgonzi has only had 1 draft, and so we don't really have a track record here to know like which way he might be leaning, at least this early. His background is interesting because he was in Kansas City under Pioli, he was there under Dorsey, and then Veach, and so he was exposed to 3 pretty different philosophies when it comes to drafting and roster construction. So there's still a lot about the Titans we are learning, and we'll learn as we go. So, but regardless, I don't care what philosophy you are really trying to apply here. More draft picks are good for a team with as many needs as Tennessee.
It's interesting if you're a Titans or a Giants fan looking for silver linings. Those teams sit at the top of the draft order right now. And then, and like I said, don't seem to need a quarterback. And then the next 4 teams in the top 10 presumably have a need. And that doesn't even include the LA Rams, who we'll get to in a little bit. So the idea that you could be open for business has to be enticing to these teams that are trying to upgrade their roster. One other thing I wanted to hit on here, and I'm with you. This seems like a situation where you will desperately be trying to trade out of this pick. But for the sake of argument, if the Titans or the Giants were picking in this spot and you're not going to take a quarterback, where do you go? Like, I think that is a very interesting idea here. Like, edge rusher seems to me to be the default option. But is there something that I'm not giving enough credence to? Like, you just look at it with Reese potentially being an edge rusher, with Ruben Bain. That is where my mind goes. Is there something else I should be thinking about?
I mean, if you're the Titans, I think it's pretty easy. If you're stuck at one and you're picking, it's Arvell Reese. I mean, he upgrades a key position for you, gives you a dude on the defensive side of the ball in the front seven that you can do a lot of different things with. I think that's pretty easy. Now, if you're the Giants, pass rusher is not exactly your top need. I mean, you just drafted one second overall last year. Uh, I mean, Brian Burns, what he's doing with the on that defense now. So I don't. It's not as cut and dry. So then things get a little more complicated. But again, I don't. I don't think the Giants are picking that early when it's all said and done. And that's almost why. I mean, can we skip the Giants for now and just go right to the Browns since we were talking about them?
Yeah, absolutely we can.
All right. I said we'll talk about the Giants here in a second, but because we talked so much about the Browns, and I really believe they're going to finish with if not a top two pick, a top three pick. I mean, we've talked about it before. They saw last year as a one quarterback draft, and that quarterback went one, so they traded back from two, giving them more ammo in this draft to not let that happen again, where they were not going to be left without a quarterback. And I honestly don't know what Haslam is going to do this offseason. There's absolutely a case to bring back both Stefanski at head coach, Andrew Berry at GM, when you consider how hamstrung this organization was the last few years because of the owner forcing that Deshaun Watson trade. But the record is undeniable, and it's undeniably bad the last few years. And ultimately, maybe Haslam decides a fresh start is needed. And if that's the case, then we're back to square one, where this organization maybe isn't as desperate to get a quarterback this year. But let's just say, for hypothetical, Stefanski, Barry, they're back. The pressure's on to win in 2026, and that means throwing everything you can at finding that quarterback upgrade, and it's going to happen most likely through the draft. And so I think where things get most interesting is to see which or how many of these quarterbacks declare. Because, again, if it's only Fernando Mendoza, then, all right, we got to be aggressive to go up to one to get him. If Mendoza, Ty Simpson, and Dante Moore all come out, which is possible, then things get more interesting about what their plan of attack is. I think Moore will be the most interesting of this group because, again, he's only 20. He has under 20 career starts. Oregon's going to be good next year. Phil Knight's going to cut him a multi-million-dollar check. So he could go back, get paid, get better, mature, all that good stuff. But if he sees this as, hey, Ed, strike while the iron's hot, let's go in this draft, it looks like I'm going to be a top 3 pick, that might be hard to pass up. So Moore's NFL decision, I think, is going to be a major domino here, because if he comes out, he's right there in that top 5 overall mix, and that might change what the Browns are looking to do. And so that's a big domino here.
It's wild to me. And look, I know exactly how bad the Browns are. I've watched a fair amount of Cleveland Browns football this year. I know what it looks like, but hey, the defense is fun at least. But
it is.
I don't know how you could go into this season with what you had at quarterback, and if that wasn't bad enough, you essentially pull the plug on a quarterback who's going to give you a chance by trading Joe Flacco away. And I know Flacco wasn't good, but you trade that guy away, you're signing up for a lot of weeks of playing with rookie quarterbacks. And so it seems weird to me that you could head into this season with that as your plan and then hate what you see so much that it would cause you to pull the plug, especially on a regime that just got extensions last year. I would like to think there's more of a big picture vision here for Cleveland than to be so, I mean, that's fair. Your dismissive laugh is totally fair, but to head into the season knowing that Dylan Gabriel and Shadur Sanders are probably going to have to play a lot of snaps and then be so alarmed by what it looks like that you're cleaning house, that would be kind of crazy to me. But the Browns have done many crazy things, to your point.
Without going too far into this ownership group, it's just you can't predict what they're going to do. I mean, I wouldn't be shocked either way. And look, I won't even go as far as to say there's a right or wrong move, because again, this regime has had a lot of years to get it right, and they haven't been able to. But I think that they did the responsible thing last year by not forcing the quarterback and saying, "Hey, we're going to load up for next year and find our guy." So, I would like to see them get the chance, and we'll see how that plays out. But and that's why it's important for more quarterbacks to come out so they have more bites at the apple. Because if they don't, then theoretically, there's a chance they could be on the outside looking in once again if they do not have that number one overall pick. And say the Jets just love Mendoza, they've got a little bit more ammo to go get him if they wanted to. So, it's a tricky spot if you're Cleveland, and it will make for a really interesting offseason for them because they have to make a splash at quarterback and go for an upgrade in a big way, and I think the draft is the way to do that.
I think the draft is the way to do that too, but you're so right. I mean, 3 is about as low as you could stomach being. Like if you're climbing higher in the pecking order than 3, it's starting to feel really uncomfortable. And honestly, you'd probably rather be higher. You'd probably rather be 1 or 2.
Well, and to your point, this team has a lot of needs. Like it's not like you drop the quarterback in there and you're ready to go, especially a rookie. They need help badly at offensive tackle. They have the worst. I think they are 32nd in the league in terms of wide receiver depth chart. I think they are 32nd. So you can if they don't go quarterback, say Mendoza's the only one that comes out and they don't love Mendoza for whatever reason, then then they could go offensive tackle and wide receiver with these 2 first-round picks and theoretically get better and take a big step forward on offense. But the quarterback question is still lingering, and it's something that without having an answer at the most important position, it's tough to see the direction of this franchise and where it's going.
Totally worth mentioning. Joel Bitonio, Wyatt Teller, Ethan Posick, and Cam Robinson, all free agents in 2026. Like this offensive line needs to be rebuilt. You can do some of that work in free agency, but
and Conklin's on his last legs. DeJuan Jones coming back from a major injury. The offensive line needs to be. You'd love to bring back Bitonio and Teller. They're not what they used to be, but they're still serviceable starting players in the NFL. So there's a lot of things they need to do to that offensive line, and especially this draft. There's no Joe Alt. Like we're not going to draft a player in the top 10 and he's magically just going to fix a position, but you can take a step forward. Spencer Fano or one of these receivers, especially, there's a lot of different ways that you can fix this offense. And so it'll be interesting to see what their plan is to how to do that this offseason.
I wonder if and I don't think that they would. I like everything about the Travis Hunter trade seems like it was geared at having the ammunition to get a quarterback in the draft. But if you wind up in a spot where you're worried about that, I wonder if they would dip their toe in the acquiring a veteran market. I mean, the Watson trade worked out as poorly as conceivably possible, but Kyler Murray looks like he might be playing in a new city in 2026, and it would not be remotely as expensive as what you did to get Deshaun Watson. It seems far-fetched to me, but I wonder if where they wind up in this order might force their hand just to make sure that they have more on the roster than they did this year.
That is a possible outcome. There's no doubt about it. Because if Dante Moore goes back and say even if Ty Simpson comes out, maybe they don't love the fact that he has 10 starts, and they're not ready to spend a top 5 pick on him. So, there could be in a position where they have to go to plan B, whatever that looks like. Is that Kyler? Is that trading for Mac Jones? There's a lot of not great options, but that's kind of what plan B looks like. And that's, I do think we need to say, let's hope we get to see Shedeur here the final month of the season just to see what he looks like. And, you don't want to, I have strong doubts with that, especially how that first game went. But, he was thrown into a tough situation, with some first team practice reps, with some more experience. Maybe he will look better as the season goes on and he can finish and with some momentum going into the offseason. You don't want to completely close the door on that, but it's it does feel like that's a long shot in terms of, okay, we're going to bank on that being our quarterback answer going into next year.
I think that's very fair. It's easy to write off Shedeur after what we saw against the Ravens, but I'll give him the grace of saying, yeah, I mean, you're thrown in the middle of a game without prepping for that opponent. The Ravens defense has been playing much more like we expect them to over the last month. This game coming up this weekend, going to the Raiders, like a very a dysfunctional Raiders team. We're going to talk about them in a minute. Don't worry. Like if Shedeur looks promising against the Raiders, then maybe I'll revisit this. But I agree with you right now that it's tempting to kind of close the book on the options available to the Browns right now. But we shouldn't do that just yet.
Yeah, first and foremost, it's going to be quarterback first round, find the guy, and if they need to hope that works out.
Plenty more to work through in the top 10 of this current draft order. We'll do that right after a break.
This episode of the Athletic Football Show is brought to you by our friends at Facebook. You know, every year around this time, there's that one night when everyone's back in town, Thanksgiving Eve. You swing by your old bar, see some familiar faces, maybe even reconnect with an old teammate you haven't talked to in years. That's what Facebook's all about, those little connections that end up meaning a lot. Maybe it's someone posting in your high school alumni group saying they're home for the holidays. Or maybe you find out about a local turkey trot where you dress up with family through a Facebook event. Even hopping on Marketplace to grab something to spice up your home ahead of Thanksgiving can spark a new friendship. This season, Facebook's reminding us that a little connection goes a long way. So if you're heading home, hop on Facebook, check out your group's events Marketplace, and see who you might reconnect with. Let's reconnect this holiday season with Facebook.
Well, Dane, we're talking about continuing to evaluate Shedeur Sanders. Right now, the New Orleans Saints hold the 4th pick in the NFL draft, and they are very interesting to me because this is – hey, Shedeur, for all the attention that he gets, we're still talking about a 5th-round pick. Mm-hmm. The New Orleans Saints have a month and a half to evaluate a guy that they spent a top 40 pick on in Tyler Shough before they potentially have to decide what to do with a top 5 pick. And I don't want to speak too glowingly, but like the first 2 weeks of the Tyler Shough era were encouraging, I will say, but I'm dubious to think that he could show them enough that they can just write off quarterback heading into a draft where they might hold a top 5 pick.
If Tyler Shough plays at a similar level the rest of the season as we saw last game against Carolina, should that change I mean, you're Mr. New Orleans. Should that change the Saints' goals this offseason? If how he played against Carolina, if we see that level of play the rest of the season, how should that change the way they attack the position this offseason?
I'll even say this. I know like the Saints got their ass kicked by the Rams, and everybody saw the ugly pick that he threw to Emmanuel Forbes on 4th down, but like against one of the league's better defenses and everything Chris Shula's got going on over there, like I thought he did not look hopeless against the LA Rams, even though that was a lopsided game. So like I said, man, it's tough when you're talking about having a top 5 pick. And like organizational DNA matters, right? Like Mickey Loomis just got a hell of a vote of confidence from Gail Benson, the owner of the New Orleans Saints. So it doesn't look likely that the decision makers in New Orleans are going to change anytime soon. And like Mickey Loomis, it is baked into the Saints DNA. Like they're not tanking. They're not like gutting things and laying down for next year or 2 years from now. Like the whole time, ever since Sean Payton got there, the Saints are wired to try, even when maybe they shouldn't. So it doesn't feel far-fetched to me to think like if Tyler Shough looks good here over what they still got 7 games to play. If he looks good, it's not a hard sell to me to think Mickey Loomis could do that. And yeah, like we got him some offensive tackles. Let's add some depth to the receiver core. Maybe we beef up this pass rush to make the defense a little bit better. You could sell me on that completely. I don't know if you should though, because even like I said, I've been impressed with Tyler Shough, but when you're talking about having a top 5 draft pick, it's dicey. It's dicey to say like, no, we're set here with what we saw. I mean, I don't want to hate on the guy because it looks like his season is over, and that sucks for Michael Penix Jr., but look at how much optimism was born out of the last 3 weeks of Michael Penix's rookie season. And look where the Atlanta Falcons are right now. Like, hey, Ty Simpson all over again. Small sample sizes can be deceiving, right?
No doubt about it. But I think your point is absolutely correct, though. Like, this is the same regime that drafted Tyler Shuck in the top 40 picks is the same regime that's going to be doing the drafting this spring. I think it's almost ironic that I think all the teams in the top 10 might have the same GM. Like, we might see any turnover among the GMs and head decision makers among all these teams in the top 10, which seems rare, seems really strange, but it could play out that way. But this is also a Saints team that needs a lot of help elsewhere. I mean, I'm looking at their roster and it's like, yeah, they could really use a wide receiver. They could really use interior offensive line help. The defense is getting old. The number of defensive players currently in the NFL who were born in the 80s, I can probably count on one hand. The Saints have 2 of them. And so, which is kind of depressing that, I mean, we're getting to that. You and I are both born in the 80s, right?
Yeah, buddy. Oh, so, I know. Like, it's getting sad to see the birth years on the prospects that are coming out. Yeah.
But I mean, Demario Davis, Cameron Jordan, I mean, those guys are both 80s kids. So, but that also speaks to, all right, they're time to turn the page at some point here soon. And Alontae Taylor is a pending free agent after this year. So the Saints have a lot of needs where there's not a quarterback sitting there for them when they're drafting that they think is a clear upgrade. They have plenty of other directions that they can address and feel like they're making their roster better for the future.
Here's a silver lining. I was curious for your take on this because, like, again, after quarterback, I'm looking at edge rusher, especially like in the top 5, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking at edge rusher. I'm not even really looking at receivers so much. Sometimes you'll see top 5 receivers, but like number 1 receivers, number 2, number 3 receivers, you typically don't see that as often. So immediately after edge rusher, I start looking at offensive tackle, and I think it's a shitty year for some of these teams that need offensive tackle help, who like the Titans and the Giants, for example, where it's like, okay, we have our quarterback. Maybe the Titans would love to upgrade their offensive line. It's been rough for Dan Moore. I know they just gave him a ton of money. J.C. Latham has had his struggles. The Giants are set at left tackle, but maybe they'd like a right tackle. But like, does that guy exist? Like, I feel a little bit for teams that are going to be picking highly who want to draft that anchor of their offensive line. And the silver lining for the Saints is that's probably the one thing you can afford to ignore. Like, you just drafted Kelvin Banks and Talisa Fuaga. Eric McCoy's hurt, but he would eventually be back. And also Luke Fortner's been playing well at center for them. So at least the Saints can look at it and be like, all right, we need receiver, we need edge rusher, we could probably use some corner help. We're eventually going to need a linebacker. Obviously, we could need a quarterback, but at least we don't have to be worried about this offensive line class.
We talked about it last week on the pod when we talked about my top 50 about how like doing a top 7 this year was just hard because these guys, like I have not studied the 2027 class yet. But I can off the top of my head think of 6-7 guys that'll be in 27 class that would be number 1 in this class. Like, it's a rough year at the top of the draft. And, I think it's, in most years, some of these guys we're talking about in the top 7 wouldn't be going this high, but somebody has to go. And I mean, okay, let's just pivot to the Giants since we skipped them at 2. Right tackle could be a position that they're looking at hard. Jermaine Illuminor, he's probably going to get paid this offseason, and maybe it'll be by the Giants. But if it's not, and it's a position that they need to go after, okay, would you feel comfortable taking Spencer Fano in the top 5? The tape doesn't really support it, but I think he's the best offensive tackle in this class, and he's played right tackle at Utah, which fits what the Giants would need. So, I mean, I think that even though that's probably earlier than you'd like to take him, you feel like you're getting a starter at a key position that is a building block of your offense, helping your quarterback, helping everybody else. So even though it's not going to get you super excited. I think that it does make sense in this class. But the Giants are also in a spot where, they could use another receiver, especially with Malik Neighbors coming off serious injury. But this is a receiver class that's, again, I don't know that I would draft these guys normally in the top 7, but Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. And I think something important with Jordan Tyson, a factor that doesn't get talked about enough, is just the medicals with him. In 4 years in college, he has missed almost 40% of his team's games due to injuries. Like, that's his first 2 years. It was a major left knee
injury.
It
was tough. I don't think I realized it was that tough.
Yeah, I mean, his first 2 years, he missed, I think, a total of 12 games. It was a torn ACL, MCL, PCL in his knee. Last year was a broken collarbone that ended his year. Now this year is a hamstring injury that sidelined him for the last month, and it might continue. There's a chance he might play this weekend, but it might continue another week or two. So, it's one of those things that how does that, and I'm not saying he's going to fall in the draft, but the medicals will at least be a concern that teams are going to talk about at length, especially when you consider a guy like this in the top 10. And then the other name that I would mention with the Giants is Jeremiah Love, running back Notre Dame. And look, I get it.
Don't do this. Don't do this, Dane.
Drafting
Don't start this discourse.
It's got to be talked about because I'll put it this way. Okay, drafting running back in the top 10, like, I get it. It's cringeworthy. It's a cringeworthy topic from a lot of people. And I mean, it's like when I hear 6'7" and my kids are in earshot, it's just torture to my ears. Okay. So I get it. But if the Giants are drafting in that 7 to 12 overall range, like I said, I don't think they're going to be picking top 2, top 5. I think they're going to win a couple more games. I think they'll be finished somewhere in that 7 to 12 range. I think that sounds right. Love's going to be in play at that point. And I think it is debatable about whether or not it's the right move with the current version of the Giants. But, all right, 2 things. First, Love might be the clear best player available when the Giants pick. That is certainly a scenario if they're picking, say, 9th. And then,
you're stressing me out.
So, okay, do you draft the best
right
running back, or you draft, a B-level corner or whatever it may be? So the second thing is, it's never a bad thing saying that you left the draft with the most explosive offensive weapon in the class. So, again, I'm not saying that Giants should be drafting a running back, but it's going to be at least part of the conversation here. I mean, I feel like part of this conversation about going over the top 10 teams and the different directions they could go is getting ahead of some of these storylines. And Jeremiah Love potentially to the Giants as being not the pick, but at least someone that is part of that conversation. I think we're kind of getting ahead of that because there could be a scenario where that's how it works out.
Dane, if Joe Shane survives this change in New York, and we don't know that he will, right? Like,
it's house money if he does. He can do whatever he wants. It's like, hey, why not?
If he survives this and turns around after on TV, because they were on Hard Knocks that year, after being televised, moving on from Saquon Barkley and all that nonsense, if he turns around and drafts a running back in the top 10 to a team that, in my opinion, is like not ready for that piece, it'll be bad. It'll be really bad.
It's like I said, I think it's definitely debatable about whether or not the timeline of that roster is ready for that. And again, I'm not advocating for this to happen. But I do think that it is going to be part of the conversation because, again, if they're picking 9th and they don't love their options at right tackle, they don't love their options at corner, they don't love their options at receiver, like it's going to be a weird spot because the top of this draft is very mediocre. And so I think it will be they could find themselves in a situation where their clear best player available, the most explosive offensive weapon in the draft, is sitting right there for them. Or do they go with someone that they graded as, a average level starter at a different position that's maybe, not as important a position as some of these other ways they'd like to go. I'm just talking through scenarios here and thinking about different directions they could go. It's going to be something that's talked about.
No, this is important. It's the whole point is to examine as many angles as possible. But I'm having an existential crisis, and I get it, man.
Just imagine Giants fans listening to this right now. If they haven't turned it off by now, I get it. I'm not advocating for it. I'm going through scenarios because that's what we're doing. It's scenarios. That's what mock drafts are. And this isn't a mock draft, but we're going through scenarios of what it could look like. If it doesn't play out perfectly, which it often doesn't, they could be in a position where they have to make a hard choice.
Hey, let me tell you this: if it comes down to this, and I'm a big believer, like just draft the good football player. I get it. Just take the good football player. If the Giants are in that situation, and if they're picking high enough to draft Jeremiah Love, then they'll probably be drafting high enough to take Caleb Downs. Just be the team that takes Caleb Downs. And first of all, they need help in their back seven anyway. He is a guy that can wear a variety of different hats. He can raise the floor of your defense. And I like that a hell of a lot better than trying to dump a really good running back onto an offense that might not be ready for it.
Downs is my third overall player in the draft. So, sign me up. You're just getting a really good football player, so I'd be all for that.
My dream for the Giants would be whether through trade back or, like you said, maybe they play their way into like the 7 to 12 range. But either way, if they picked high and came out of this with like Downs or their favorite receiver, whoever that is. If it's Jordan Tyson, fine. If it's Carnell Tate, fine, whatever. But drafting the best receiver in this draft to go along with a guy who already looks like an all-pro caliber player in Malik Neighbors, I'd feel pretty good about either of those outcomes. And it's really not a knock on Jeremiah Love. I just don't want to sign up for 4 more years of what we already did with Saquon.
Yeah, and especially, obviously Cam Scatterbo looked, he was a good player before the injury. You're going to worry about durability moving forward with him, but I think it gives you a little more confidence that, you can find the Tyrone Tracy's and the Cam Scatterbos in the third, fourth, fifth rounds where you don't have to force that. But again, it's never the worst thing to say you left the draft with the most explosive offensive player in the draft. That's all I'm gonna say. But hey, let's go to the other New York team because the Jets.
Let's move on to them because actually, Dane. All right, I'm recovering from my crisis, but can I sell you a little New York Jets hopium? Because when I was doing this exercise, considering where Jets football has been in recent memory, and the fact that they just had a fire sale at the trade deadline, I came out of this exercise pretty encouraged about what's in front of the New York Jets. And obviously, it's problematic when you don't have a quarterback of the future. And they just benched Justin Fields. It doesn't look like that experiment is going to work out. But when you look at this, I feel encouraged for a couple of reasons. Number one, for being a bad football team with no quarterback, I actually kind of dig the Jets' infrastructure, and most of that comes from having bookend tackles that I feel pretty good about. Like Olu Fashanu and Armand Membo, they look the part. They look like guys that you can count on. You got a couple nice pieces on your defensive line that figure to be around for at least the near future in Jermaine Johnson and Will McDonald. On top of that, I feel good about like what the Jets did in this draft, at least with the important picks, looks solid to me. Like I said, Membo and Mason Taylor both looking like they are living up to their draft billing. And so if Woody Johnson is going to give Darren Moogie and Aaron Glenn the runway to rebuild this thing, which trading away Quinnen Williams and Sauce Gardner seems to suggest that that's going to happen, I feel like this brain trust seems to have done a good job in the draft already, and you've kind of got the bones of a decent roster starting to take shape. Garrett Wilson, I forgot to mention him, but that's another talented piece that's kicking around. So, yeah, they got to find a quarterback, obviously, but when they do that, they could be putting him into a roster that's not as awful as I think people would have you believe. At least that's my contention.
No, I get it. With Aaron Glenn, Darren Moogie, they're not going to rush this process. You don't trade away Quinn Williams and Sauce Gardner and then become competitive the next year. This is going to be a process for them. And so they're in a position where they don't have to force the quarterback pick this year. They have those 2027 picks where they can even trade back this year and get another 2027 pick and load up for next year and really cash in on a class that we think is going to be pretty strong at the quarterback position. But yeah, I think this is they hit on Membu, which has been awesome to watch.
I always say Membo, even though I know it's Membu. Like I apologize to Armand, but thank you.
I mean, he was one of my favorite players in the draft. So seeing him play well has been awesome to watch this year. And yeah, it gives you a reason. Mason Taylor's awesome too. Gives you a reason to watch that Jets offense this year. But yeah, this is a team that it feels like a year away from being a year away. And so it's just going to be a process. It's going to take time. And there's a lot of different directions that they could go in the first round this year if it's not a quarterback, whether that's another weapon at receiver. They could upgrade on the defensive line. Corner is obviously now a pretty major need with Sauce Gardner no longer there. There's a lot of different directions they could go, but this feels like a process for this team.
So because of the trades that they did, also they picked twice in the first round and twice in the second round, and so that's a lot of opportunities to add premium type of talents to your team. I like that thought, to be honest with you. I mean, if it works out that you pick high enough to have a shot at a quarterback, that's fine. But I enjoy the idea that you don't have to force it this year. And I don't want to sell you false hope that whoever they add in the offseason, I don't know, maybe they bring back Tyrod Taylor when this season's over, or you can dabble in the veteran market. But if you have to go that route and you can build up your secondary, add to your offensive line, or draft some receiver help, if you can go that route and add 4 guys with big picks and worry about the quarterback in 2027, as a draft nerd, I'm definitely excited about that. Obviously, it's got to work out, but that's a real chance to sort of overhaul the DNA of your roster quickly.
Well, and okay, let's play it out. So they draft Carnell Tate with their first round pick, Avion Terrell. So they have 2 Ohio State receivers with Garrett Wilson and Carnell Tate. That'd be fun. Avion Terrell, corner from Clemson, with their second first round pick. And then they have 2 seconds. So go to the trenches, get Amari Washington, a defensive tackle from Oregon. Get double up with Ducks. Get Emmanuel Pregnon, the guard from Oregon. You upgrade both sides of the interior, offensive and defensive lines. And that way you can go into next year, and the Jets will probably still be pretty bad, where they don't have to trade up to go get a quarterback. They'll probably still be picking top 3, top 5. You take Julian Sayin or Dante Moore or Arch Manning or whoever it ends up being, and you still have 2 more first-round picks after that to add other premium positions. So the Jets, with the draft capital they have, if things have to play out a certain way, but it's not a stretch to say that they're going to be in a position to really remake this roster. So going into the 2027 season, it looks completely different than what we're looking at right now.
It's hard for me to let go of the idea that you basically can't do better than Sauce Gardner, Garrett Wilson, and Jermaine Johnson in one draft, and the Jets are still here. But hey, it's a new regime. Hopefully, ownership stays out of the way long enough to give them a chance. Really, that's my hope for the Jets. But I like the idea that it doesn't feel desperate for the New York Jets right now. Like, you don't have to break your neck trying to solve the quarterback riddle this year. If it works out that way that you can, cool. But otherwise, you can take the low and slow approach to this thing. I'm always trying to avoid recency bias, Dane, but we're recording this the day after Vegas's loss to Dallas on Monday Night Football, in which they just barely looked like an NFL team. Like, that's a harsh thing to say, but the eye test doesn't lie.
Oh.
And so sitting there with the 6th pick at 2-8 in a year where I talked about this with Mays after that game, even if you didn't think they were going to be good, you thought that they were going to have some sort of respectable floor with Pete Carroll and Geno Smith. And clearly that's not the case. And sitting there potentially with a top 5 pick, or at the bare minimum, probably a top 10 pick, it makes me wonder what's going to happen here. Like, it really kind of feels like all bets are off. Like, I don't know that you can guarantee Pete Carroll gets another year as the head coach. I don't know. I guess John Spytek would stay in place as general manager. But other than that, I mean, I don't know if Geno's in the long-term plans here. And it's an interesting space to be for this team. And then I'm still processing it, because even if I didn't think they'd be good, I didn't think we'd be doing this right away.
Right, because exactly to your point, Pete Carroll and Geno Smith were expected to set a certain floor. Even if there were questions about how good they could be, what is that ceiling, the floor wasn't going to bottom out. Well, we're past that point. So the Raiders look like a team that'll be drafting top 5, and a team that will be looking for that quarterback. And again, a lot of the conversations that we had with the Browns, they're in a position where they might be boxed out of one of these quarterbacks. Are they looking to trade up to number 1 to get a guy? How involved is Tom Brady going to be in that decision? If they find themselves on the outside looking in at a quarterback prospect because they're picking in the draft order, what's their plan B? Are they going to be in the mix for Kyler? Or, it's just that the Raiders have a lot of questions, and it doesn't feel like there are as many optimistic answers on the horizon for this team.
Best case scenario, I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but let's just say maximum chaos, maximum intrigue for us, certainly. The maximum number of quarterbacks that you could see declaring for this draft that have a reasonable chance of being top 10 picks. Is it 4? Would it be Mendoza, Simpson, Sellers, and more?
I guess, yeah. I mean, I still have.
I know you hate this. I'm trying to game out what the availability might be.
And that's fair. I mean, the way Sellers has played, like talent wise, yeah, I think Sellers could go that early, but it's just
Sellers is purely a bet on talent. Obviously,
yes.
We haven't seen that bear out, but I mean, you watch that game against A&M where they collapsed in the second half.
Which half? Yeah.
Yeah. But it's fully on display how much more help the guy needs, and I don't know if that's a good enough reason to draft him highly right now. I think if I was as somebody rooting for Lenoris Sellers, and no offense to my Gamecock fans, but I kind of hope he just transfers to a better program in the offseason and gives it one more go on a team with more NFL talent. But he has an undeniable amount of talent. And so if he were to join this draft, I'm tempted to think a team would be willing to take a chance on that type of talent, no matter what it has looked like.
All it takes is one team. I mean, if Anthony Richardson didn't go forward to the Colts, does Anthony Richardson still go in the first round? Maybe. I don't know. We'll never know. But he's going to go down in history as a top 5 pick, and obviously a bust because of that. With Sellers, all it takes is one team. But it's tough because if it's one of those teams picking in the top 10, chances are it's not going to be a good team. It's going to be a team with a lot of holes, and similar to college, going to be asking their quarterback to do a lot. It's going to set them up for maybe disappointment because the NFL is not a developmental league, and we've seen that time in, time out. So hopefully he goes back. I think that if best case, realistically, 3 quarterbacks come out that have a chance to go top 10, Dante Moore, Fernando Mendoza, Ty Simpson. And I don't think that order is like set in stone. I mean, I think Dante Moore is awesome. If he comes out, I think he's going top 5. Fernando Mendoza probably goes top 5. Ty Simpson's more of the wild card where he could easily go top 5. Tape shows an NFL quarterback, but the lack of starts, the lack of starting experience is something that will be a hang-up for a lot of teams, and understandably so. So, it will get really interesting, but that's a big if for all 3 of those guys to declare. I have a hard time seeing it. I think at most we have 2 of these quarterbacks declare.
The reason I ask is the Raiders have the look of a team that could be the odd man out, where
Mm-hmm.
it's easy to say tear it all down and find your quarterback of the future, but if two quarterbacks are worth drafting in that range, the Raiders have the least amount of ammo of the teams that are like trying to get up there, right? Like the Jets, we just talked about all their capital. We talked about the Browns' capital. Talk about the Rams in a minute, sitting there somehow with 2 first-round picks as a Super Bowl contender. It could be tough, and so like it's easy to want to move on from this era, but the reality might be a lot harder. And I wonder if the Raiders wind up in a situation where you're trying to bolster the offensive line. I mean, you just re-signed Geno as part of this trade. Try to bolster the offensive line, try to add some more weapons. I mean, I doubt any Raiders fan wants to hear that, but that might be the uncomfortable reality of where you are right now, just with this quarterback class and what you have available to you.
And let's just get ahead of this now. Unless you're the Titans picking at number 1, the odds of you being able to trade back are very, very low in this class. Just there's not going to be a lot of teams looking to trade up into the top 10 to get any of these players. So I promise you we're going to hear from a lot of fans saying, all right, well, we'll trade back, we'll get more pick. It's just not realistic to think you're going to have many trade back opportunities in this class. So I think we just get that out there now. But I think you're right. The Raiders are in a position where, you know, maybe Mendoza is the first quarterback. Say the Browns draft him. The Saints stick with Shuck. The Jets are looking at 2027, and Ty Simpson falls in the lap of the Raiders, where they feel like, all right, that's a worthy guy to bet on. Maybe that happens. But, you know, there's a chance where it doesn't, and, you know, they have to go in a different direction and kind of, you know, stick with Geno another year. They feel like they're kind of in no man's land right now.
I agree. And for the record, even if they manage to draft a quarterback, we got to do something about this offensive line if you want anybody playing quarterback for this team to succeed.
That's why they shouldn't have drafted a running back last year in the top 5.
That is a valid point. Well, let's talk about that, Dane, because all right, let's do a 2-for-1 here, because Washington at 7 and Cincinnati at 9 are fun wild cards in this thought exercise, because we know they're not going to draft a quarterback. They're not. Right. Like, that's impossible. I feel comfortable saying that on the record. And so it's a fun situation where 2 disappointing teams, I think the Commanders and Bengals need to drastically upgrade their rosters anyway, but I think it's fair to say they would be better teams if their quarterbacks were more available for them this year. And so you roll into this draft, getting those guys healthy and hoping to address some of the problem spots. It's funny to think, like, and here's a toxic idea for you. Both of these teams could stand to use a first round top 10 type of pick on their defense, right? They both need so much help. The Commanders pass rush, outside of Dorrance Armstrong, who is hurt, they need to add a guy there. That's why, like, if I'm looking at them in this situation, I'm looking hard at whatever edge rushers might be available. The Bengals could use help at all 3 levels of their defense, but it creates an interesting conversation if a Jeremiah Love is head and shoulders better than the guy that's available to you. And I'm sure
now you're doing it.
I'm sure fans of these teams don't want to hear that. Although I will say this, the thing that makes it fun for me is like Jeremiah Love in a backfield with Jaden Daniels, or on an offense with the amount of talent that the Bengals have. That could be like, you know, throwing a match on some gas-soaked wood, you know? Like, that could be a hell of a lot of fun, whereas I don't think the Giants are at that place yet. So it's a little more tenable for me to think that Jeremiah Love could land in a situation like this. And, you know, maybe we finagle the defense another way, or we'll just score 45 points a game. Who cares? It'll be fun.
With the state of both of these defenses, like, it's there will be a lot of hate pieces written about if they went with a running back in the top 10. But I think, again, just like I said with the Giants, you can cling to the fact that you're drafting the most explosive offensive weapon in the draft, and how that helps everybody else on offense. Helps your quarterback, helps the passing game. It's obviously it helps the running game. So it's something that should at least be talked about. It'll be part of that conversation. But at the end of the day, I think it's got to be defense. I mean, does Ruben Bain make it to the Commanders at this point? Maybe, maybe not. Is this where we see the first corner drafted? Jamar McCoy from Tennessee. How do they feel about Mansour Delane from LSU, who just continues to be the best cover man in college football week in, week out? If this guy doesn't win the Thorpe Award, I don't know what we're doing. But
clip that out for me, Beller, if you don't mind. Thanks.
Bengals too, right? I mean, they, especially with a defense that we don't know what the pass rush is going to look like at this point next year. So you could really address any position. The guy that I keep coming back to with the Bengals is Caleb Downs. I think he'd be such a great addition. Just not only a day one upgrade over Jordan Battle, and like if I have to watch Jordan Battle tackle anymore, it's just. And Caleb Downs is just the opposite of that. But he's also a big culture guy, and he's going to flip things for that defense. Even as a rookie, I have no doubt he can come in and be part of a culture shift on that side of the ball. So Caleb Downs is the guy that I keep coming back to for the Bengals as a guy that just makes perfect sense.
It's fun for me to think, like, I get it. Teams haven't drafted safeties in the top 10, and maybe that'll continue. But there are several landing spots that make sense, primarily just like the Commanders and the Bengals they need help any way they can get it. And I mentioned the Giants' needs on the back end too. And so like even if the value doesn't line up the way that you would prefer, putting a blue chip caliber defender onto a defense with this many holes, who's going to second guess that too much? And I mean, I agree with you for the record. It's funny that like Washington could use some juice on their offense to be clear, like to be fair. They're old and slow. Like as much as I like Terry McLaurin, that's not his game either. Like, but when you trade away all the picks you did to get Laramie Tunsil, Debo's not under contract, but you used a pick on that. I don't know how you avoid addressing the defense with the picks that you do have left.
That's a good point, though. I mean, Debo, he might be one and done in Washington, and you just can't rule out a receiver there, especially with McLaurin and the injury issues he's had.
They need the help. It's just a matter of it was like, okay, we spent last offseason committing resources to the offense. Yeah. Are we going to do it again? And when you have a young quarterback like Jaden Daniels, maybe the answer should be yes. I mean, shoot, maybe teams with LSU Heisman winners are just going to stockpile offense and ignore defense. I don't know, but it's interesting to think the way that like the best players on the board could line up with what these teams actually look like. I feel like the decisions that ultimately get made there could definitely make people mad, but that just might be how it falls.
And this will obviously shift as we get into free agency and all that. But one player is not going to be the difference in going, having a season where you're 6-11 compared to 11-6. Like obviously, like that's just there's a lot more that the Commanders need to do to kind of fix their issues. But it'd be pretty surprising if the Commanders and Bengals they both do not go defense.
And the Commanders do have almost $100 million in cap space. Like there are many avenues open to them improving this roster. Whereas I think the contracts the Bengals have handed out in recent years, I think and because they're the Bengals, I think you're going to be relying a little bit more on the draft to improve your fortunes. But this is still the lifeblood of roster building. And the Commanders are particularly interesting to me just because you only have 2 picks in the top 100. Like your 2 is going to Houston as part of the Tunsil trade. So this pick, wherever it winds up being, it's 7 right now, wherever it moves, it represents your best chance to add a difference maker in this draft. And what they decide to do with it will be interesting because I can imagine their fans just screaming defense, defense, defense. And will it line up that way? I don't know.
Yeah.
The ultimate fly in the ointment, and I know we're running out of time here, but we gotta talk about the LA Rams, Dane. Because look,
picking 8th.
We had a lot of opinions about the James Pierce trade when it happened, and I guess if I'm trying to be nice to Falcons fans, like James Pierce has had a solid rookie season, and we just talked about how maybe this is the draft to not miss a top 10 pick, like maybe it's okay if you just have James Pierce and no top 10 pick in this draft, but it's still got to sting knowing that you've lost 5 straight. Kirk Cousins has not looked like a guy who should give you a lot of optimism about the second half of the season. And more importantly, for our purposes, you have now opened the door for the LA Rams to do some truly wild stuff. Like, this is like Philly having the Jalen Carter pick a couple years ago, where it's like, wait, you're going to play in the conference championship and you have this resource that obviously they could use it to go hunting for their quarterback of the future, or you could add somebody sick to a roster that's already great. It's so much fun to think about.
Well, and ironically, I mean, speaking of the Falcons, this was kind of their thinking when they drafted Penix 8 overall after signing Cousins. It was they weren't planning on picking in the top 10 again. So we're not going to pass on our chance to get a quarterback while we're here. That may be how the Rams are going to think. Now, obviously, it hasn't worked out well with the Falcons, but that, I think, was more the contract they gave Cousins and the quarterback they drafted at 8 as the reasons why that plan hasn't necessarily worked out so far. But the theory of, hey, let's not pass on a QB early when we don't have a plan for the position beyond a year or two, that's where I think it makes perfect sense if Ty Simpson's still on the board at this point, for the Rams to go ahead and make that move. And with the way the Falcons are playing, like you said, I mean, this right now it's at 8. It might turn into 7, might turn into 6. They might be in a more easy position to go get one of these quarterbacks. So yeah, I think the Rams are going to be really interesting with this pick, and yeah, it has to sting if you're the Falcons with the way the season has gone, and you have a lot of questions moving forward. The Falcons, the optimism meter has to be pretty low, not only for this year, but 2027 or 2026, 2027 as well.
I don't know what you do there. And I guess let's be fair to Kirk and give him 7 weeks to show something different. But like, it looks like Kirk Cousins might be a guy you have to move on from and just eat that money. We'll see what happens with Penix and his injury. I mean, I'm not giving up on the guy, but he'll be recovering from an injury. And one way or another, I think you got to cover yourself if you're the Falcons,
sure.
Like whether that's holding on to, whether it's Kirk Cousins or whether you bring in somebody else. It's not a great place for
this
Atlanta
is the 5th season-ending injury for Penix over the last 8 years, I think, or something like that. It's just, and not to mention that Penix he's always been an inconsistent quarterback. I think that's just always who he's going to be. You watch him at Indiana, you watch him at Washington. He would look great one week, and then next week he would be all over the place. It's very inconsistent, and it goes back to his mechanics. It goes back to some of the accuracy issues, and that has followed him to the NFL, where he some weeks looks like a very more than serviceable starter. Other weeks he looks like barely a starter, and it's hard to see that getting that much improved. But I mean, who knows? Maybe he'll show improvement in 2026, stay healthy. But to your point, yeah, they've got some decisions to make, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's a new GM making those decisions this offseason about that.
With everything Terry Fontenot has done to finally get the Falcons back to the playoffs, to have it faceplant this magnificently, yeah, I can't say that would be super surprising. Can I tell you my half-baked take about the Rams?
Bring it.
It's so easy to just be like, well, yeah, like the Rams are going to gun for a quarterback at the top of this draft. And maybe they will. It makes perfect sense. Matthew Stafford is in the twilight of his career.
He'll be 38 this offseason. Yeah.
But I feel like I know coaches, man. And coaches, they like to think a little bit more outside the box than we give them credit for. Like, everybody's going to have Sean McVay trying to trade into the top 3 to get Fernando Mendoza. What if Sean McVay and Les Snead are like, no, let's get Arvell Reese in the top 10. Let's get Mansour Delane. Let's get a cover corner because our outside corners could do with some upgrading. Let's draft a tackle because Rob Havenstein and Alaric Jackson are getting older. That like there's a million ways they could go. What if they did that in the top 10 and then they still have their other first round pick where they could get a quarterback? They could even trade up for a quarterback. They could use their 1 and a 2 or a future 1 or whatever to go get Lenoris Sellers if he were to be available or something like that, or even draft a guy later on. Like, you mean to tell me Sean McVay is not going to develop some weird draft crush on like a 3rd round guy that they could get? Like, that's the type of thing coaches love to do, especially play calling head coaches who were like, oh, get him in here, get him with my playbook and we'll be Gucci. Like, I can picture this so clearly where they're going to zig where nobody expects them to.
We know they tried 2 years ago to trade up for Brock Bowers, and they just weren't able to make it happen. Like
they are down to do some wacky stuff. That's exactly why
doubt.
This is in my head.
I mean, honestly, I don't think that's crazy at all. I think, honestly, it's probably more likely they don't draft a quarterback than they do, just because I don't think there's going to be a lot of quarterbacks to draft in this top 10. So yeah, I think it's more likely they go with Francis Mauga, right tackle from Miami, or one of the corners, like you said, or, I mean, yeah, there's a lot of different ways they could play this, but they're going to get one of the better non-quarterbacks in this draft, good chance. And that's, who knows, they could be picking 8th and then also 32nd. You know, they could be the Super Bowl winners with a top 10 pick, and they'll be going into the offseason feeling pretty good about that.
Very quickly, we can wrap up with the team currently sitting 10th. Like I said, there's 10 teams with 3 wins or less. The Arizona Cardinals, after their loss to San Francisco, they're 3-7. It's hard to formulate an opinion on them. Like here, right now, I think Jonathan Gannon and Monty Ossenfort will be back to guide this offseason, or at the very least, I think Monty Ossenfort probably will be. But what do they do at quarterback? Like, it doesn't seem like
next year?
It doesn't seem like Kyler Murray has a future there, but who knows? There's a lot of season left. Jacoby Brissett has plummeted back to earth since getting that starting job. So, like, I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that Kyler plays quarterback for the Cardinals again this year. But then once you get to the offseason, what do you do? Like, is his time there done? Can you mend that fence? Do you want to mend that fence? So it's hard for me to know how to feel about him, other than the fact that in general, I feel solid about where their roster is, other than the fact that they seem to be at a quarterback crossroads.
Yeah, I don't know what to make of the quarterback situation right now. It's especially with where they're slated to pick right now. They're just going to be not going to have a lot of clear-cut options at that position. So that'll be something to watch. We got the Jeremiah Love discussion here again. Like, this is another team that doesn't feel like they're in the right timeline to make that swing where they're going to be investing in a top 10 running back. But again, if you're looking to help your quarterback situation, an explosive option like Jeremiah Love, maybe that's what does it. I think if I'm Monty Ossenfort, I'm hoping to see Spencer Fano still there. Give me the right tackle.
You read my mind. I swear. We didn't talk about this before, but I'm looking at the draft order right now, and I was like, this feels like the perfect spot where, like, if I'm drafting 5, I'm not excited about taking a tackle. But if I'm the Cardinals sitting at 10, I can do that. I can draft a tackle.
Yeah, Jonah Williams going to be a free agent. Pair him opposite Paris Johnson Jr. I mean, that makes a lot of sense. That's the type of building block that this team needs. And you still have questions at quarterback, but I think it's very unlikely you're going to answer those questions in this draft anyways if you're the Cardinals. So adding a building block like that helps your offense is a step in the right direction.
I will say it's a disappointing spot to be, obviously, because the Cardinals were, at least the optimistic view of the Cardinals were that they were going to take that step, and they led the NFC West halfway through last season before they fell off, and the hope was that they could maintain that and build on it and be in the mix to, if not win the division, then at least make the playoffs, and they are comfortably in last place look and holding a top 10 pick right now. Maybe that won't be the case by the season's end, but it's not where you were supposed to be. And that's why, like, if there is a change at coach or a change at GM, I can't say it would be super surprising, but my gut feel on this is just that these guys will get the year to pivot. Especially, like, you know, they didn't draft Kyler Murray. They inherited that quarterback contract. So it's a weird spot to be. I'm curious to see there's a half a dozen different ways the Cardinals could pivot from where they are right now.
Despite the record, is it fair to say the Cardinals are in a better spot now than when they took over this regime?
Oh my God, dude. I'll never stop thinking about the fact that when Gannon took over, the Cardinals were the butt of like 1,000 tanking jokes. Like they were the team that was tanking. That's how little talent they had. And that's why I'm not trying to sell anybody that this is a great roster, but I just look at it and I'm like, okay, like the bones of a good team are here. I mean, the Cardinals are 11th in defensive DVOA right now. Like they've got talent on both sides of the ball. You'd like to see Marvin Harrison pick it up a little bit. I think the receiver core could be deeper.
Yeah, Walter Nolan's just coming back. Your first round pick.
Walter Nolan. Yeah, his debut game against Dallas is still in my mind. So there's reasons for optimism here, but it's kind of muddied up by the quarterback situation.
Yeah, no doubt. And I'm like we said, I'm not sure what the answer to that is.
We'll see. We'll see if who knows? Maybe the Cardinals will be picking in a vastly different spot than what we're thinking, for better or for worse. There's still a lot of football left. I'm intrigued to see how this all kind of settles, but the early impression of what the top of this draft could look like is starting to take shape, and I think it's really interesting. Hopefully y'all enjoyed this conversation.
It's a little depressing, a little interesting, a little exciting. Like there are a lot of different emotions with all these teams, and some of them having more options than others. But yeah, no, I'm glad we did this because it was a good check-in, and then we'll do it again here, in another month or so, and it'll be interesting to see how much it changes.
We'll have plenty of time to do this, but yeah, I think it's just helpful to sort of get the lay of the land and be like, all right, these could be the pitfalls when it comes time to actually doing this. So we'll be back to regularly scheduled programming. It's rivalry week in college football next week, heading into Thanksgiving weekend. We got a lot to talk about with all the big games, all the big prospects next week. We appreciate it. Until then, we'll talk to y'all soon.
Thanks for watching. Follow the Athletic Football Show wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to subscribe on YouTube.